So in this third video we're going to show you something pretty easy. I've got the Albacombi connected as before, but the only thing that I have added to what I had before, which is I have connected the standard 0 to 180 ohms tank sender connected between input number 2 and ground. What I'm going to use the Albacombi is just as a tank sender to NMEA 2000 and converter, and display that information through the internal monitoring web server. Now, again, this is a standard tank sender from Video, Faria, or whoever. And the first thing that I'm going to skip everything that I've done before. So the first thing that I do is I open my browser and I point to the Albacombi web address, which is a 192.168.0.50, and I go, as I explained before, I go to the full view mode. In this case, I have taken out all the analog gauges because I am going to just get one gauge with tank information, and I'm going to channels, and I'm going to select the particular channel that I've connected the input to. Now, if you recall, what I've done is I've connected my tank sender to input 2, which is one side of the tank sender to input 2 and the other side of the tank sender to GND. Now, if I go to the Albacombi web server, I very easily see that I have to go to the channel number 2. I click in there, and the first thing that I see is that the channel is in resistive mode. If the channel was on voltage mode, or were in voltage mode, I will have to change the switch as I have spoken, or as I explained on the first video. Since the channel is right now on the resistant mode, it's okay for me. Now, obviously everything is wrong on this channel because it was configured for a different application. Now, the first thing that I have to do is configure the channel as the name. This is tank 1 level, and signal is coming from where? And I say this is the general fluid signal. What type of fluid are we reading? Obviously, the thing that we are reading is fluid. The type of fluid, it will get populated in NMEA 2000 side of things. So it's general fluid and fluid level. Units, it's as well percentage. What will be the alarms in percentage? Say the high alarm will be if I go above. High alarm does not have a lot of meaning in here, but let's put 100. And limit low, say 10%. So if I go below 10%, I will have an alarm. Filter level. Now, low reductions, this is the damping, so to speak. You can play with it a little bit, but it's just damping. I have low reduction, medium, and high. It's low damping, medium damping, and high damping. Now, sensors. Now, when I have selected a signal, which is fluid, the sensors, basically I have a signal, analog signal coming from the input, which is fluid, and the channel is configured in resistance mode. So with that, the system, if I press sensor, the system presents me with a few options. I'm going to select video 100 to 0 to 180 ohms standard sender, and if I press click, the database in here will get populated. Now, this is a pretty basic calibration database, which says when I'm measuring 10 ohms, I have 0%, and when I have 180 ohms, I have 100%. So I have two very interesting buttons in here, which allows me to measure the resistance, in this case, that I'm reading from the sender. So you are not able to see it, but I have the sender in my hand, and if I take the sender in the lowest position and I press measure, I see that the sender is 8 ohms. I press measure again, 0 ohms. I press measure again, 0 ohms. So there is a little bit of filtering, so I can assume that the sender, whenever it's on its lowest position, it will be 1 ohm. And I'm going to put the sender on its highest position, and I press measure, and when the sender is in its highest position, the sender is at 186 ohms or 187. Okay, so what I can do is I can calibrate I can rewrite the calibration table, say that whenever I have 1 ohm, I have 0%, and whenever I have 197 ohms, I have 100%. When I have that, I just press save, and everything is saved. Now I can check if my calibration is correct, and say that I put again the sender in the low position, I press measure, and I see that I have 8 ohms, 0 ohms, because of the filtering. Then I press calibrate it, which means tell me what is the data I'm getting after the calibration. I press calibrate it, and it is 0, which is what I expected, because the sender is on its lowest position. When I move the sender into its up position, I measure the signal coming from the sender is an 186, 187, around that, and I press calibrate it, and I've got 100%, which is what I expected. Say that you want to have 100%. You can tweak this a little bit, press 186, save, and then when I calibrate it again, I will have 100%. So basically you can tweak a little bit. Now, to check if what I have is correct, I put the sender more or less in the medium position. It's more or less in the medium position. I press measure, I have 93, and I see, okay, what that value will give me after calibration, and I've got 50%. Right, so basically this is a pretty, so imagine that I have an irregular tank. I can put more calibration points. Now this is a pretty basic calibration of one channel, but it's always done in the same manner. Say that you've got a predefined senders, a calibration table that you can check, or you can modify or create your own calibration table. Now say that I want to go to I want to create an EMEA 2000 PGN. Now remember that we are on channel number 2. Okay, so in the documentation in here we always talk about channels number 1 to 12. So channels are always referred by the same number. Now if I go to N2K and I select one of the fluid level channels, PGNs, which let's say it's PGN number 1, I say okay, which is the instance. You can have up to 253 tanks. So I'd say that this is instant starting from 0. This is instance number 0. What is the capacity of this tank? Okay, this tank is 150 liters. What is the type of fluid? And in here you tell, is it fuel, fresh water, wastewater, live well, oil level, black water. So this is fuel, and this signal is coming from channel number 2. Now you can only select the channels which have been defined as fuel level. So you cannot do a mistake. Now if I press save, I will start to send a PGN which will send the information that I'm measuring into the analog channel. I press save, and right now I'm sending an EMEA 2000 PGN with this information. Okay, but aside of that, I want to show this information on my computer. Now if you go to this place and you say, okay, I want to select display number 1, which before we were using as RPM, and I want to use it as a signal coming from channel number 2, which was tank level. Say title is tank level, the label is percentage, this gauge, zoom view times 3. I want to see this on the full view, and the alarms will show me both. The alarm settings will create the areas of green, yellow and red, and as well will define the limits of the gauge. Now say that in this case there is not much sense to talk about alarms because this is just a tank level. I would say that the green zone is 0 to 100%. Yellow zone, because I don't want to have any yellow and red zones. So this is a little trick which I do. Yellow is 100 to 100, and red is 100 to 100. So indeed, in this way, I've done a 0 to 100% tank indication, all green with the percentage indication. If I press save, it's saved. In this mode, I can only see the configuration. I do not see the data itself. So if you want to check the data, you go to full view. You have to wait a little bit the first time because all the gauge data is being fed to the system. Now you see that the tank level is in there. If you recall, to move the tank level display, I have to press this padlock, move this gauge wherever I want to be, and I press the padlock again. Now what I'm going to do right now is to move you are not able to see it, but I'm going to move the gauge now, the sender. Now I will move the sender to its bottom part. You see that little by little the arrow goes to 0, and I move the sender to its medium again, and I move the sender to its full part. Full deflection is 100%. So, and I go now to 75, more or less. Okay, I'm doing it manually, so I just do it by hand. So this is the way you can configure one tank level. Now imagine, as I explained you before, that you want to use this as your configuration or sorry, your monitoring system on the boat with your iPad or anything. So you just put your access, direct access, with the string that I've shown you before, which is --kiosk http //192.168.0.50, which is the address of the Albacombi, and you just double click or put Chrome in the startup folder, and when you do that, you've got a monitoring system. This monitoring system, I move the sender to half. This monitoring system, it's only for 1 gauge, and I'm going to do a second video to add a couple of other things so you can see more instruments on the same page.